What can IKEA teach you about selling? IKEA, the Swedish institution, the place you go when you want to encourage your partner to divorce you. Is it just a furniture shop and some nice meatballs? I don't know. But what we found is IKEA has a fundamental bias that it sells upon, and that is if your customer has been involved in the building, there is a sense of pride and ownership around the idea. And in this video, I'm going to be talking about how we can bring IKEA into your sales and discovery calls. So if I have an idea and you have an idea, you always prefer your idea. And you might say, well, that's not true, but it's always true. If we're having a conversation, we're trying to make a decision around what to do in the evening, it's very, very rare that you won't think, well, I've got the better idea here. And that's just human nature, human bias. We are all narcissists on some level, and it's not a bad thing, it's a survival mechanism. You should be interested in yourself and find yourself interesting. So the IKEA Curve is something that we started using in our sales approaches, particularly around things like software or anything that's a complex solution. And the reason for this is quite simple. When someone builds an idea and shares with us the idea that they would perhaps want to bring to the table, often it starts to bring up features, of course, but those features are often rooted in symptoms. So let me give you a few examples of how this might look. So let's say you're a piece of software in a particularly competitive environment and you're talking to your prospect and they say, look, I've heard all this before, we've used things, they've not really worked. What makes you different? Now, like with all objections and with questions, the best place to start is by saying, yeah, it's a good question, and to be honest with you, I'd probably feel the same as you if I was talking to me right now. So you're always going to accept what's been thrown across to you. But then you're not going to try and handle the objection, you're going to say something more thought-provoking. And this is where the IKEA Curve comes in. You're simply going to say, well, look, you sound like someone who's done this dance before, you've seen different softwares like this before. I suppose if you were in my shoes, what would this need to look like to stand a chance? Or if you were building something for yourself, what would you want it to look like and how close have you come to finding that? Something that gets them talking about if they were involved in the building themselves, if they built their own software around X problem, what would it look like? And then the magic happens, and the magic is they'll say things that are interesting features that make you go, ooh, what made you say that? So they might say, well, I'd want something that can completely automate X process in the business. And whatever they say, your follow-up is always the same. That's really interesting. What that feels like that's come up for a reason. And it's always come up for a reason. They'll say, yeah, because that takes us a really long time. That costs us a lot of money. And there it is. There's the problem. There's the motivation. But it's almost been reverse engineered. They've built the idea in their head. They've told you what it would look like. And you've then asked, well, why would you need it to look like that? And in doing so, you've then got to symptom, problem, and motivation all at once. So another area this can be really, really useful is demoing. So oftentimes what I'm seeing when people give demos is they take people through absolutely everything a product could do. And what's going to be really beneficial here is cutting that right down. It's a video for a different time, but I've taught businesses before how to do a 10-minute demo rather than an hour-and-a-half demo, have better results, have better conversion. It makes almost no sense because you think, well, I want to show them all the good bits. But what's good for you isn't always good for the other person. We always prefer our own ideas, right? So before we jump into a demo, what I always say to people is I always say, look, before we jump into this, if you were in, say, the developer's shoes in our business, what would this need to look like to even stand a chance of being something that you or the team would use? And then they're going to start listing things. Well, it needs to be able to be mobile based. It needs to be fast. It needs to be able to integrate with Salesforce. There'll be different features that come up. And hearing those different features will take you down that same journey we just talked about. And it runs something like this. What would it need to look like? They give you the features. You say that's really interesting and sound genuinely interested. What's either what's made you say that, feels like that's come up for a reason, or tell me more, pad that out. Why is that important to you? Go down the rabbit hole. Why has that feature come up? And what is it symptomatic of? What problem does it lead you to? And you'll find here that if you adopt this approach, what can happen is the prospect builds your solution for you and they sell themselves on your solution. So you're not there as a salesperson to persuade someone, they must persuade themselves. And this is a wonderful way of doing that. So there we go, IKEA, not just for Swedish meatballs. If you want to ask me any questions about how this might work, any other videos you'd like to see around objections or whatever it may be that you're struggling with in sales, drop a message in the comments and I'll see if I can help you